everyone. Welcome back to an extra special episode of the One to Know podcast. I'm Joel Haas.
I'm Avery Hill.
I'm Allison.
And I'm Lexi Linderman.
As you can see, we're not in State Collegian, the usual studio right now. We're in Arizona as Penn State prepares for the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State. Looking ahead to that matchup, guys, first of all, I'll kind of open it up. What did you guys want to talk about?
I mean, first of all, we can't ignore I don't even know if you could call it an elephant. Is a giraffe bigger than an elephant? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, the whale in the room. It's Ashton Jeanty. I mean, you look at him like he's, 138 yards away from Barry Sanders' record. Obviously, I don't really have a comparison for him. Like, I talked to him at media day, and he said, like, he has Saquon's elusiveness. He said Barry's elusiveness. He said Derrick Henry's stiff arm, Alvin Kamara's, I guess, versatility. Like, he literally has the whole thing, like the little David Montgomery graphic. That's what Ashton Jeanty is. So I think he's like the most interesting, obviously, player to watch out for. I think it'll be very interesting to see if, one, he gets that record and just how he runs. Obviously, he's off of what some people call a Heisman snub. He had, I think, Maxwell, but not Heisman, a couple other awards. And, of course, again, right behind the Barry Sanders record. So it'll be very interesting to see how he runs. He's run, 100 yards in every game, including against Oregon. So it'll be just interesting to see how the Penn State defense is able to try to stop him.
Yeah, you just talked about him. Whale in the room, Heisman runner-up. It's impossible to ignore him. This is a guy I had 1,900 yards close to, just strictly after contact, let alone over 2,000 rushing yards. All week you talked with several different defensive players, just what's the biggest thing to stopping him. Obviously, they had a lot of respect for him, but it's bringing him to the ground, which, it's as simple as it sounds, but this is a defense that has had tackling issues with wrapping up. I look at the Bowling Green game in particular. Dom DeLuca talked about it's just stopping them on contact, because if he slips by, that's when he becomes an issue. He gets into the second level. Tom Allen, we called him Derrick Henry. I think it was Devon J. No. You got a Blake Corum comparison from somebody. And
I think that was Kobe King.
It was Kobe King. Yeah, I think someone referred to him today as Maurice Jones-Drew. All kinds of running backs, all kinds of generations. I mean, this guy is legit. Learned today that he's Italian. So, in case
something like that.
For those that were wondering. But this is a talented guy. I think Boise, he's going to be the difference maker in this game. Obviously, you can say that he's been the difference for Boise State in all of their games based on the other personnel that they have. But I think he goes over 150 yards, a couple scores. I really don't think it'll make the difference, but I think he's going to be the reason if Boise State pulls this off.
Well, yeah, I mean, he basically is their entire offense. He's so good to the point where, Maddox Madsen just has to do the bare minimum. The wide receivers have to do the bare minimum. Everyone else has to do the bare minimum. I mean, obviously, the offensive line has to block for him and everything like that, and they need to do a good job. But overall, Ashton Jeanty, is their offense. And I think you mentioned the tackling issues. Bowling Green was definitely one of those times, but also Minnesota, they struggled a lot with tackling. And, the offense kind of pulled through to win that game for them. But if, this is a different breed. Ashton Jeanty is a different breed. They cannot have tackling problems against Ashton Jeanty. And I saw something where it was, Ashton Jeanty has, so many yards after contact. They're better off just, not even trying to touch him, as a joke, because, he only has, ha ha.
Yeah, he might run out of bounds instead,
But anyway, yeah, Ashton.
Turf monster.
Afraid of the sideline.
Get a little toe in, trip him up.
Yeah, he actually gets better when you touch him, so just stay away. Don't even.
Exactly. But yeah, no, Ashton Jeanty's obviously, I mean, like we said, Heisman runner-up. I think we basically touched on all that. So I think it's honestly just going to come down to, again, it's going to be an offense versus offense battle. I think, I don't know if they can stop Ashton Jeanty. I think they can do their best to contain him, and I think that's what it's going to come down to is, how well do they contain Ashton Jeanty. It's you can't stop him. That's not possible. So I think it's a contain thing, and it's also a forcing Maddox Madsen to throw thing, because they forced him to throw, that Penn State defensive line. I asked Maddox Madsen about Abdul Carr today, and he seemed a little scared. He basically said that the speed Abdul Carter has is just different. So if you got to get Madsen, uncomfortable. But if Ashton Jeanty's just running all over them, then that's not going to happen. So I think it all just boils down to, can they stop Ashton Jeanty?
And I mean, one thing Jeanty kind of talked about was trying not to get into third, because he acknowledged Penn State's defensive front is the best he's played. He talked about Abdul Carter obviously being the game plan. He talked about even Zane Durant just obviously with his ability to be athletic, get off of blocks, things like that. And he talked about you don't want to get to third down. And if you look at Ashton Jeanty splits, he has 1,200 yards on first down, mostly first and 10, whatever, just get out the gates. So I think a key to Penn State is just surviving those first two downs. If you can get to third down, obviously depending on the situation, you will force Boise State to put the ball in the air, and that's when you just have to play ready. You have to stay home. You have to stick to your responsibilities, which isn't that easy when you have a guy like Ashton Jeanty, because it's like sometimes you're like, I don't want to, even give him a chance to kind of get out and run. I don't want to, whatever. But you will end up kind of over pursuing things and, getting hit and play action if it's literally like your only focus. Obviously, he is the focus, but you still have to, play football, stay home, and, stick to your responsibilities.
Yeah, I think it's almost tricky because, like, if you sell out for Ashton Jeanty and you're loading the box and things like that, and, as soon as he touches the ball, you have all 11 players collapsing on him, it leaves opportunities for some of the other players on Boise State. And, like, you almost wonder if Penn State's going to make it too big of an emphasis to stop Jeanty, that they forget about some of the other guys. Obviously, Boise State has some other talent on the field. Cam Camper at receiver, and I know their tight end is good as well. And Tom Allen talked about both of those guys. He's said he's been impressed with them, and they're going to have to worry about those guys as well and try to stay more balanced and disciplined as a defense. But yeah, I think if you're Penn State, you have to obviously worry about Jeanty a lot, but you can't let other guys beat you as well, potentially by getting too focused on Jeanty. So that'll be interesting to see. But just looking across the board, like at other positions, like obviously Jeanty's going to get he's going to get his yards, obviously. No one's really been able to stop him. Like you guys mentioned, he hasn't been under 100 yards all season. I do think this is the best defense he's faced. So, maybe that happens on Tuesday, but regardless, I think Penn State, looking at other areas of the game, I think Penn State has the advantage pretty much across the board besides running back. And I think that's something that they can exploit. Like, I just don't see a way Boise State's defense stops Penn State's offense, and even on the other side, I think I don't see how Boise finds much success in the passing game as well. So I think it'll be a very one-dimensional game for Boise State, and it'll just be how far can Jeanty carry them. But the reason I'm so confident in Penn State to win this game is I just think they have mismatches, especially in the trenches. I think Penn State's much better on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and I think that'll make a huge difference in this game. But I don't know, where do you guys see this? Outside of Jeanty, what do you think maybe are Boise State's best chances?
I don't think they have a chance. I think that really you talked about the physicality in the trenches is going to play a huge role, and I think you're really going to see the difference between a G5 Mountain West school and a Big Ten school. Nick Dawkins talked about today how it's just the game is won in the trenches regardless, and you obviously didn't point to Penn State, but they're bigger and stronger, both sides of the ball. Obviously, Boise State played Oregon, and they hung in there. But that was, week 2 or 3, and you look at the other level of competition that they've played, and it's just not there. And I'm not discrediting what Boise State's done, but it's just there's different level of athletes, and there's a reason why Penn State, I don't consider Penn State a blue blood program, but they're in those conversations. And it's all credit to Boise State. What they've done is great this year. Spencer Danielson's kind of turned that program around. But, other than Ashton Jeanty, you can't really point to any position that Boise State as an advantage in over Penn State, or even kind of comes close in comparison. Cam Camper, you just talked about, on wide receiver, has had a great year, over 800 yards, transferring in after 3 seasons with Tom Allen at Indiana. But he hasn't gone against an A.J. Harris, Jalen Kimber. So if Jeanty gets, I'm not going to say shut down, contained, it's is he going to be able to create space to even have that as an option for Boise State?
Yeah, I also think you mentioned in the trenches. I think Penn State's offensive line is coming off the 2 best games, I would say, of its season. Nick Singleton, Collegian Allen just ran all over Oregon, ran all over SMU 2 straight weeks, and that's a credit to them, honestly, but also a credit to the offensive line. They also were really good in blitz pickup against SMU last week, and Boise State's defensive line kind of thrives off the blitz, and I think if Penn State's offensive line can continue to pick up the blitz well, I don't think Boise State's defensive line stands a chance in passing downs against Drew Aller and everyone. I also just think this is a good matchup for Penn State's offense, kind of like Joel said. I think so much of the focus is on Ashton Jeanty, Boise State's offense versus Penn State's defense, but Penn State's offense is very good, even though they've been inconsistent this season, but they've kind of found it the past couple of weeks against Oregon and SMU, and I think that just this Big Ten offense against a group of 5 defense, I think Boise State's defense is still good, but I don't think it can match up with what Penn State has on offense.
Yeah, I think going off of that, I do think that Penn State's offense does have a good game. I don't think Boise State matches up with them well, but I do think that this case is unique because usually it's okay, we can compare positions, they're better than them, this, and that. But I think they have proven that, Ashton Jeanty is, his value is way above just kind of not what we've ever seen, because there's been guys with the impact of him, but just of what we've seen, I guess, in recent memory. Like even like you look at Travis Hunter, who was my pick for Heisman. Like he is impactful in the sense that he is amazing on both sides of the ball, but he is not going to win you the game each and every time. As you saw, they just lost the bowl game to BYU. Obviously, his touchdown was late while they were already down, but he isn't that type of X factor that Ashton Jeanty is. I mean, you look at, again, the Oregon game. They did lose the game, but he ran for about 2-something, and they lost, by about one possession. They really lost because of special teams woes. Like, I kind of talked about it before, but they're not going to lose Penn State because of special teams woes. We know that. We've seen Penn State special teams, so I think that is the only difference, and I think the real test will become, again, in that trenches, looking at Boise State's offense, especially versus Penn State's front four, because I personally don't have that much confidence that the back end will be able to get things done if, Jeanty is able to get past that front four. I mean, it's shown even like just through the years. If you go back to when Penn State played Michigan, I mean, going against, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, like they were pursuing then. It's the same guys out there like Jalen Reed and guys like that, Kobe King. Obviously this year they've had their woes once the ball gets to the second level. So I think that will be the interesting thing, because I think if the ball gets to the second level, Jeanty is scoring, 9 times out of 10. So
I think, yeah.
No, you got it.
Okay. I think another thing on top of just the physicality and how they match up on a position basis is Boise State hasn't played a game in I think 24 days, 25 days, something like that. Penn State obviously played last week, and obviously you can make the argument coming in fresh versus seeing live action. We were at practice for Penn State, and granted it was the beginning of practice, but we saw him
practice.
Yeah, we saw him stretching and punting. So wasn't so I think that's something you could. I think Jeanty was kind of healing up from an elbow injury he talked about, but part of him was not playing for that long kind of had its effects. He hasn't seen live snaps, game action, because you're tailoring that off at the end of the season because you want all the guys healthy. You're not going full speed at practice. I think, Avery, you talked to Terry Smith about it today, how, he said he got softer, but they're going through jog-throughs, Tom Allen talked about. So it's just, I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Boise State is going on game 14, Penn State's going on game 15. It's a long season, and we've seen it with injuries, we've seen it in just how this December model is being just scheduled and the effects it has on quite literally everything, but that's a different conversation. But it's just, Boise State hasn't played football. Penn State coming off a dominant football, obviously, yes, a football game, dominant playoff game, Big Ten championship against Oregon. They've been battle tested recently. Boise State struggled in that Mountain West championship game against UNLV. So I think Boise State hasn't really, since Oregon, had a game where they actually competed. And when you add a layer on,
I don't know about that, but okay.
Against an elite caliber team, they've struggled against Mountain West teams, I feel like.
I mean, that just has to do, you play UNLV, you played them twice in a year. You're not, that's football.
UNLV's not good.
UNLV.
Okay, when I say not good, but
I don't know what you were watching. There were people telling me that UNLV was going to beat Boise State. I'm just saying. But yeah, playing teams twice in a year is never easy. And I do think that, again, Boise State has shown, and the fact that their game against Oregon came in the early season, I think that's even more of a testament to how they are and how good they probably have become, because they progressed through the season. I think they play Oregon in week 9, week 10. I might actually pick Boise State for the game. And they did that in Oregon as well, which is obviously another factor. And then going back to, the health or, the game load thing, not playing the game in 24 days, I think it's a factor, but I think there's obviously pros and cons on both sides. You've played a lot of games in a row for Penn State. You might be tired. You might be beat up. You play a lot of games, or, you get that break like Boise State got. A guy like Ashton Jeanty, who has gotten probably 36 carries in a couple games, he gets to heal up. I think that's a pro for him, but I think for not the rest of the team, but for some other players, you're going to see to where, they haven't played real, full pad football in so long that it's going to play a toll. So I think that first half is going to be key. I think if Penn State is able to get an early lead in the first half, especially a comfortable lead, that'll make things a lot easier to maintain in the second half. But if it's close, I do think that Ashton Jeanty and company just, comes together in that second half and, gets back to playing football. Because it's not going to take the whole game. It's the playoffs. They played a whole season of football. It's not going to take the whole game to get back to, regular. So.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to what you said about this Penn State secondary not being able to wrap Ashton Jeanty up. I think it's interesting, the Bowling Green game was one of their first game of University Stadium. They said after the game with all the missed tackling was that they were trying to do too much. They were trying to make a play. And I think that the incentive to knock Ashton Jeanty on the ground and like get him
Yeah.
on and like make that highlight play against Ashton Jeanty, I think could be a problem if, you know, they were doing that against, you know, Bowling Green. So like, because like obviously like there are guys that obviously you want to have that highlight where like you brought Ashton Jeanty down for a tackle floss, like you stopped Ashton Jeanty like on a breakaway run, like that's obviously an incentive there for them. So I think they really just need to like stick to the little things and just like tackle him like how they would normally tackle anyone else. I mean, obviously, they're probably going to have to do a little bit more to get him on the ground just because he's so good at football.
Yeah.
But I think if they start trying to do too much, I think that's where it's going to become a problem, and then they're not going to be able to contain Ashton Jeanty if they're trying to do too much, like too much when they're tackling him.
I think that's a good point. I think it was Devon J. Thomas who literally said this week, who like, because he obviously defensive tackle, who he said he prides himself on being a run stopper as the best part of his game, and you know Ashton Jeanty runs the ball, so I think he said it's a treat to play against Ashton Jeanty, and like he was one of the guys after that Bowling Green game who talked about like wanting to knock like the lights loose. I think that was the quote he talked about. So I think that's something to actually look at if they can't tackle. Like granted, you know, when I say not tackle, like how many are they really missing? Because Jeanty's gonna be able to shed off blocks and everything of that nature.
Yeah.
But something to look at.
The other scary thing is like Jeanty said leading up to this game that he's been dealing with like a lingering elbow injury throughout the season. He said he now feels fully healthy ahead of this game. So, you know, 100% Ashton Jeanty might be even better than what we've been seeing the last few weeks where obviously he's still been dominant. So that's something to worry about. But, you know, maybe Boise State having the time off between the Mountain West Championship and now has given him a chance to kind of recover, which is obviously a scary thought if you're Penn State. Meanwhile, obviously Penn State's playing every week and you know, the more games you play, the more injuries you have, the more you're going to get dinged up, things like that. But, I mean, I forget who it was. I think it might have been Dom DeLuca who was saying, like, it's a good thing that they've been playing, like, consecutively every week because compared to years past, like, when they're getting ready for the Peach Bowl or the Rose Bowl, there's, like, a 3-week build-up because they're not in the Big Ten championship game or anything like that. And they have, like, 3 weeks to prepare. And he said it gets them out of rhythm. But having played every week, he said he actually, like, enjoyed that they were able to, like, stay consistent and, like, kind of stay on schedule. It gets a little bit thrown off because you have a Tuesday game instead of, like, the normal Saturday game. But regardless, just, like, having you know, consistent games like that can like keep you in game shape. And obviously they've like tapered off what they're doing in practice. They said like, you know, cutting down reps and you know, just going through things a little bit slower and not taking everything 100% is something that like the team's been harping on. And a lot of the guys are spending a lot of time with the training staff, just like getting right, you know, in terms of eating right, sleeping right, recovery, all types of stuff like that. So I think from that standpoint, it could potentially benefit Penn State. And I think it was Avery who said, like, if Penn State can get out early, jump out to an early lead, because Boise State might come out slow in this one, you know, having to knock the rust off. And Boise State, obviously being a team that relies heavily on the run, is maybe not built to come back from a deficit like that if Penn State jumps out early. So I think that could be one of the keys to this game. And it might just be a shock for Boise because, again, in terms of the talent level on the field, like, Avery flex for a second.
Flex. Like a whole.
This is like, yeah, just flex your bicep. Like this is the Big Ten, right? Lyle, flex your bicep. Lyle, flex your bicep.
That's unreal. That's unreal.
This is the Mountain West. Like the difference in body type is like, I think it's going to be a shock for Boise State. And like obviously having the Oregon experience, you know, somewhat prepares them for that, but that was also a long time ago. And I would also say Penn State's defense, or both defensive and offensive lines, are a step up from what Oregon had in terms of, you know, size and things like that. So I think it just, you know, Boise State won't be used to playing against a team like that, and then having to do so on a long rest where you're not used to playing might kind of shock them out of the gate.
Well, yeah, and I'll say this is where like having both Nick Singleton and Katron Allen really benefits Penn State because like they say all the time, like Penn State says all the time that the reason they do that is like it helps keep both of them fresh and healthy. And I think like they've said a lot this week that they're both now fresh and healthy and they haven't been getting as beat up as some other running backs. And so, especially like some of the running backs Boise State saw as the season gone, like obviously lead backs are getting beat up. I mean, Ashton Jeanty was doing with the lingering elbow injury, like they get beat up and obviously he said 24 days to recover. But I think now this is just like the run game getting going and them both being fully healthy is just such a big benefit for Penn State, especially against the Boise State defense that probably, you know, like if Oregon couldn't handle it, like I don't think Boise State can either. So.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it'll be like interesting to see the running back do, especially I think Nick Singleton. I think he has, you know, proven himself, like I guess, you know, increasingly throughout the season, obviously as he's gotten healthy and things like that. And I think that he can, and I've kind of said this just about every game, but like it's because it's true. He can really be an X factor outside of obviously, Tyler Warren if he gets back going. Obviously last week, didn't really have too much out of him, but I think Nick Singleton can be one because I think he can just break a big play and that can change things. Just I was going to say kind of like Ashton Jeanty, but I would be lying if I said that. But still, like in the sense that they can both break big plays. It's just that Jeanty might do that 10 times out of 15, and Nick might do it 3 times out of 15. It's kind of a little different, but.
So to round it out, we can get into our score predictions. I think Penn State wins this one pretty comfortably. I just think, again, like kind of what we talked about, Penn State pretty much has the advantage across the board besides running back, and I think they'll be able to really exploit that. I don't think Boise State will have much success stopping Penn State's offense. So I have the Nittany Lions winning this 34-14.
I've got Penn State 27-17. I think they're not going to stop Ashton Jeanty. I think he goes over 120 yards and scores both their touchdowns, but I don't really think it's going to make a difference. We talked about having all those matchup advantages, the physicality. I think all signs point to Penn State advancing in this one.
I've got Penn State 35-21. I think it's going to be an offensive battle. I just think it comes down to Penn State's offense as a whole, collectively, cohesively being better than Boise State's offense, which obviously Ashton Jeanty is probably going to run for over 100 yards. Like, it's just going to happen, but I still think Penn State's offense is good enough to get the job done.
Yeah, and I have Boise State winning 28-24. I do think that Ashton Jeanty runs angry, and I think that it's a sort of controlled aggression. I mean, you kind of see with his demeanor and everything, like he wants to, like he said it straight up, I want Barry Sanders' record this game. I want this, I want that. Obviously, he wanted Heisman, but I think his ability to do that in a controlled manner and for him not to let it affect his play, I think that'll be the difference. And I think regardless of who wins the game, because I think it'll go down to the wire, I think it's just, a Jeanty touchdown that ends things, but regardless of who wins the game, I think it'll be, Ashton Jeanty's running for 150 yards. I think that's kind of a foregone conclusion. But I do think that his efforts are what's going to get Boise State over that hump and get them into the semifinal round.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching. We appreciate the views. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And for more football coverage, you can find us at psucollegian.com and follow us on socials.
Fiesta.